So here's something cool. I made a new tarot deck, and if you've been following my work, you probably already know what this is, but I will explain it to you if you don't already know what it is. This is the Endless Tarot. It is a tarot deck where all of the pictures form panoramic scenes together, so they'll always line up with one another no matter what cards you're using or what order you've put them in. They'll be able to make a little image together and kind of affect how you might usually read tarot, sort of encouraging you to interpret cards in new ways or just get a little bit of different or interesting or newer sort of nuance to your readings that might not be available from other tarot decks. It's actually sort of a sequel to a oracle deck that I made a couple of years ago, which works the same way. As you can tell, they match. So they're meant to go together, but they also work very well independently. Anyway, this tarot deck is brand new. This is my test copy that just came from the printer. It's sort of the prototype version of the deck. The final product might look a little bit different from this. It might be on slightly different cardstock or just have a little bit of variation to it compared to what we see in front of us now. But I just got this from the printer and I wanted to share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and show you some of the cards. I think I'm going to do a flip through of the deck and show you all of the cards, but if I can, I'm going to try and show you them sort of in pairs, just so you can see what they look like together. And I like to leave a little bit of space between each card, sort of like the gutters in a comic book, but you generally actually need to do that. If you like the sort of look of them lining up right side by side, they are meant for the most part to be able to do that. These cards are brand new and very slippery, which is great for shuffling, but it makes something like this a little bit tricky. So that's the major arcana. Let's do the wands next. Let's go ahead and do the cups. Oh, that's the cups. I keep getting ahead of myself. I just get really into seeing the different scenes that these can create. I have not really seen them all, like the entire deck lining up with itself, which might seem kind of strange that I haven't quite had this experience yet because I made this deck and I've spent the past 2 years working on it, but I'm still kind of getting little surprises with it, sort of these interesting moments of like, oh, I haven't seen those together before. Or maybe I just haven't seen them together in a really long time. That's the swords. And that's the pentacles. I think what I'd like to do now is shuffle these a few times, get them mixed up, and then pull some random cards and make a sequence out of those. One nice thing about a panoramic deck is that I kind of think it will cause people to look at the cards in new ways, or in ways that maybe aren't anything like really unusual, but putting them in different contexts might kind of sort of change the meaning a little bit from reading to reading. I also like that this is something you can use not just for divination, but also as sort of a narrative kind of writing tool. If you're a creative person, if you like to do writing, if you like to make up stories, I think this is something that can be kind of useful for that as well. Let's go ahead and pull a few random cards. I don't know if I'm doing like a real reading, but I felt the need to cut the deck anyway. So our first one's the Two of Pentacles. Like I said, I always kind of like to leave just small spaces between each card. I feel like it sort of helps things merge a little bit better, but you don't really need to. I know a lot of people with the Oracle deck really like to see them all side by side right up against each other. So you can see, even though these cards aren't in the order that they are in the deck, they still match up. We kind of get this image where it almost looks like our figure in the Eight of Cups is walking to join these other figures on the bridge. It kind of looks like they're headed in that direction. That would maybe kind of impact how I would read this, that we're maybe moving from an Eight of Cups into a Nine of Wands phase of life. I also like that we have like these two cats over here on the Two of Pentacles that are sort of in this opposite direction from the cat or whatever creature this is on the right. But they're both sort of looking toward the left, even though this one sort of seems to be moving toward the right. It's sort of directed in that angle. I also like how much water is in this spread. That's something that I would maybe lean into if I were doing this as a reading for somebody. I'd maybe comment on how this may be a really emotional phase of life for that person, just because we're dealing with so much of this like water energy. But I think the thing that I enjoy the most about these cards in this order that I noticed immediately was just how much it looks like our figure on the Eight of Cups is moving towards these people on the bridge on the Nine of Wands. They're even sort of holding a walking stick. Like, this is a Cups card, but they're holding a walking stick that really does look like they could just be headed to join those people. I enjoy that. Let's try rearranging these and just kind of seeing what does this look like if we put them in a different order. Does that maybe change things? Because I do feel like it reads very differently if we're no longer seeing our figure from the Eight of Cups moving to join these people on the Nine of Wands. This suddenly seems like it tells a very different story, which I think is true when you're reading tarot anyway. The order of the cards matters, but I think when it comes to something like a panoramic, what's called a myriorama, where you can mix and match and rearrange things and always get a landscape, I think when it comes to a myriorama, that aspect of tarot is emphasized. It's kind of pushed a little bit harder than you would usually be able to feel it, or might initially feel called to notice in a tarot reading with a different deck. Some people have asked me how I would do reversals with a deck like this. I do generally like to read tarot with reversals personally. I know that not everybody does, but I do. And I think there's kind of a fun way you could do that with a deck like this. If you were to draw cards and say that some of them showed up reversed as you were pulling them, maybe something like that, you would know that ahead of time, I guess, because this back design is not itself reversible. I wanted people to be able to ignore the reversals if they wanted to. But if you were to pull some cards and some of them were reversed, I've got the Queen of Cups is reversed and the Three of Cups is reversed. I think what I would do, you could read this normally, like how you would generally read your cards when you lay them out. You know, read the Magician, read the Queen of Cups reversed, and so on. But then I think what I would do to kind of play with the landscape thing is I would take my upright cards and I would make one landscape on top. And then I would take my reversed cards and I would make a second landscape that I know is reversed. And kind of read these as two separate things, sort of like maybe like an as above, so below. We've kind of got the things under the surface, maybe. I think there's different ways you could kind of have this sort of second reversed panoramic scene under your upright scene. I also want to take a moment to just share the Endless Tarot, which is brand new, with the Endless Oracle that I made around 2 years ago. These decks are meant to line up with one another if you want to do that. They use the same color palette. So for the most part, the colors are going to be pretty cohesive. The art style is obviously cohesive. There may be some difference in the final version of the Endless Tarot in like the cardstock or the card finish. Just because I don't generally work with the printer who made the Endless Oracle quite as much. They're a great printer. I do really like them. They made the test copy, but just in general, I have a different printer that I kind of just typically prefer to work with now. And so there might be some slight variations, but like I said, these are meant to visually still be very cohesive, and I think that will be the case no matter what. So using cards from... I like that with the scales. That's interesting. I'm getting distracted again. Visually, these should still pair very well, even though they might be a little bit different. I also, like I said, I made the Endless Oracle 2 years ago, and I have developed a bit as an artist since then. So if I'm being like perfectly honest with myself, I think that the quality of the tarot deck, just like artistically, is a little bit better. Just because, you know, people change, artists grow and change as they produce work, especially over such a long period of time. But I do really like that they could still be used together. They do line up for the most part. Oh, look at that. Look at the cats all together. There's a lot of cats in my work, if you're already familiar with it, you'll already know that. It's not changing anytime soon. But it is pretty cool to see them side by side, and they do line up together pretty nicely. There will be some kind of guidebook that goes with the Endless Tarot, and I haven't decided exactly what it is yet. I think ultimately the final product will depend on how well this deck does when it launches on Kickstarter. So there will be some kind of guidebook. I'm sure I'll make something pretty big and pretty expansive that will be available as a free digital guidebook. And then whatever's actually printed and included with the deck itself will just depend on how well the Kickstarter does. I would love to be able to have something pretty extensive, though, for people who are maybe reading tarot for the first time or have never worked with a deck that is panoramic like this and would kind of like some particular guidance for how to read with a deck like this. So, like I said, the final product's going to depend a bit just on how much funding is raised. But there will be some kind of guide that goes with this. So if you've never read tarot before, or if you've never heard of a myriorama before, or maybe even if you have, maybe if you've done both of those and you just kind of want some insight about how maybe this deck might be different than other ones that you've used, or maybe you just kind of want to know about some of the creative choices, I definitely plan on, no matter what, having something extensive available for free to download online, and then some version of that to be printed with the deck depending on how well the Kickstarter does. I am planning on launching the Endless Tarot on Kickstarter in April, so keep an eye out for that. I'll post updates about that as we get closer. I also have an email list that you can sign up for if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything important. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing this. I really enjoyed sharing it with you. I am so excited about this deck. Like I said, I've been working on it for a very long time, and I'm really looking forward to putting it out there in the world for everybody to use.